Okay, we're going to start. Ladies and gentlemen, senior leadership team, and members of council, welcome to the second part of our meeting for this evening, policy and priorities. We'll call this meeting to order at 7:40, December the 2nd. I have a motion put forward by Councillor Stewart that the agenda for December 2nd, 2019 regular meeting of committee be adopted. Is there any discussion in regards to the motion? Councillor Hahn?
Through you, Chair, I request item 4.6 be sent back to the Cannabis Control Committee for any further amendments they deem advisable.
Is there any discussion in regards to that amendment? Seeing no discussion, we will vote on the amendment. Can all those in favor in regards to the amendment? Opposed? Carried. Now we'll
So now you have the agenda as amended unless there are further amendments.
yeah, further.
Yes, so 4.3 and 4.4, I would like to defer those two items at this point in time to allow the Pelham Active Transportation Committee to review both documents and provide their recommendations back to council.
Any discussions on that amendment from members of council? Seeing no discussion, we'll call the amendment to vote. All those in favor as amended? Opposed? Carried. So now we will vote on the agenda as amended by Councillor Hahn and Councillor Wink. So that would be to defer items 4.3, 4.4, and 4.6. Is there any discussion on that? Okay, I'll call it the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now we'll move to item number 3. Is there a disclosure of any pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? Any member, council? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to note that as well. Okay. Moving right along to number 4. We can go to 4.1, 2019 Emergency Management Plan. 2019-0143 Fire Department. We have a motion put forward by Councillor Wink that the committee receive report number 2019-0143 and recommend to council that the Town of Pelham Emergency Plan be approved and that staff be directed to prepare the necessary bylaw for council consideration on December 16, 2019. Any discussion in regards to this motion? Councillor Hahn?
Through you, Chair, I have to. That's just kind of part of the deal, right? As far as reception center, what are we using? Where are we at with that reception center? It's not mentioned.
Through Chair, reception as far as?
So if we needed to use a facility for an emergency reception center.
For public?
Yeah, for residents. So if we needed to have them.
Yeah, so it's up to the discretion of the director of the EOC or the CMC, which myself, or the acting CMC, the clerk. It depends on where it's happening. So if the event is in Fenwick, we're probably going to use like the MCC, but if the event's here, then we'll probably use Pelham. It would be basically a remote or a floating location, whatever we deem would suit the public the best.
The reason I ask that is just because if you have a location that you have in mind, or two locations you have in mind, just making sure that there's adequate supplies at those centers, or at least access to supplies through MOUs or what have you. So in other words, you know, being prepared for it should you need to.
Yeah, so we would, well, we currently have the MCC listed as a warming center. So if it's something, an event of we would really kind of migrate to that type of thing. As far as giving supplies out like food or water or any of those things, again, that would be a reactive thing. That'd be part of the planning and logistics to go and get that stuff to, depending on the event, how long it's gonna be and the severity of that event, is that, in my experience with, is stockpiling things in a location in anticipation of something happening, it ends up getting just thrown out. It doesn't, it can
Depends on
sit
what
for
they
years,
are.
right?
Things like blankets and things
Oh,
like
yeah,
that.
blankets and
Yeah.
mat, or cots or something like that, really,
Okay.
said, as far as a group, when we discuss the plan and we go over it, it's a reactive thing, is what's the event, what's the severity, how many people we're dealing with, and what are we gonna need? And then we go get it.
Because that would lead me to my next question, that is if you have any MOUs with a neighboring municipality, i.e. Welland or wherever, or neighboring Thorold, whatever, to provide things like that, so that you don't have to go and get them, but that you'd have a memorandum of understanding in the event of having an event where you would need to have a reception center, you would have predetermined agreements in place.
Yeah, so we do have two documents in the municipality and the province. We have a mutual aid agreement, and we have a mutual assistance agreement within our, so it could be, if we have a tornado and we got a whole bunch of buildings that are damaged or whatever, we have an agreement that Welland and Thorold and Niagara Falls will send their building inspectors, vice versa. If you need fire apparatus, we'll give you fire apparatus. So we have that, both of those documents are already in place.
Okay, and also too, the second question is with regards to training and exercises. So within your group, you're doing tabletop exercises yearly?
This year we did a tabletop,
And when's the last time you've done like an actual full scale?
last year.
Okay, so you'll be doing a full scale of tabletop next year? What have you decided?
Actually, the management group, we haven't discussed next year's yet.
Oh, okay.
I just finished participating in the regions.
Yeah.
Last year we did a full-blown one with Enbridge. This year we did kind of because we do have some new members, so it was more of a tabletop educational piece. And next year, as we increase our education and our capacity amongst staff, then we'll.
So are the members on the group trained in IMS already? Have they taken the courses?
So we have two things. We have a management group and we have a control group. So on our control group, we have myself, the clerk, and the CEO that have the 300, EM and the 300. We have some staff that have the 200, and we're right now in the motions of getting quite a few people amongst the whole town
Oh, good.
into the 100. And then once we get the 100 done, we're gonna offer the 200 and so forth.
Okay, because the mayor probably would be included, I would think, in just basic level, so we can understand the protocol.
Absolutely, yep.
Good idea. Thanks.
Okay, any other discussions in regards to the emergency management plan? Seeing none, we'll call that the vote that the committee receive report number 2019-0143 and recommend to council that the Town of Pelham emergency plan be approved and that staff be directed to prepare the necessary bylaw for council consideration on December the 16th, 2019. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
I thought you were gonna sign right here where it says chair. Thank you.
Good. All right, next on the agenda, 4.2. The assumption of Cherry Ridge, this is a motion put forward by Councillor Hildebrand. 4.2, the assumption of Cherry Ridge Phase 1 and 2, 2019-0136, Public Works. That the committee receive report number 2019-0136 and recommend that council assume the municipal services in Cherry Ridge Phase 1 and Cherry Ridge Extension subdivisions and open the street within the subdivisions as a public highway by bylaw in accordance with the subdivision agreements. Any discussion in regards to this? Councillor Corr?
Yes, through you, Chair, why did it take so long to get to this point? That subdivision's been there for over 10 to 15 years,
I'm gonna let,
especially phase one.
I could probably answer that, but I think the Director of Public Works could answer that better, so I will let him,
Through you, Mr. Chair. So, Cherry Ridge subdivision, number one was done right back in the 1990s. It wasn't assumed because of litigation surrounding drainage with respect to that subdivision. So, that subdivision was never assumed by the town. We went ahead with phase two. That's what's driving this now. The litigation has been resolved with respect to phase one. Recently has been resolved. And now the developer for Cherry Ridge phase two has asked us for that assumption. And in the long and short of it is Cherry Ridge phase two outlets its storm drainage into phase one, which goes to a detention pond. So we weren't able to assume phase two until phase one was assumed, and that's why we're bringing forward a report to assume both phases now.
Thank you, Chair.
any other discussions? Mayor Junkin?
Yes, I see that the town has got to, and this is directed towards the PW director. I see the one sentence, the town will rectify outstanding deficiencies upon assumption, and it says that they are minor, but do we have any recourse to, even though it is minor, to take this back? If we assume it, can we put that work, bill it to the developer, or are we going to be eating that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, at this time, the developer is not reachable. And the town doesn't have any security that's tied to this development. So there are no recourses at this point in time. The deficiencies are fairly minor in nature. The one is there's one settlement near a storm pipe where it connects into a manhole, and there's been settlements there that Public Works is going to look at addressing, but that's the only outstanding real deficiency with the phase one. We have not been able to get a hold of the developer, and we have confirmed that we do not have securities held against this development.
Another question, if I may, and anyway, I'll bring it up anyway. We can't get a hold of the developer. It would be interesting to know if that the drainage pond that is located in Cherry Ridge, right by what is that, Belfort Street, or is that no? That's Maple. It'd be interesting to know, because it has filled in over the years, how far it has gone from its original engineered job or description, but I guess it doesn't matter anyway, because if the developer isn't around, we'll just have to assume it the way it is, and any dredging that has to be done, that will have to obviously be done at the town's expense, I take it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, or through you, Mr. Chair, staff has retained an engineering consultant to do a study on all of our stormwater management ponds. So they're completing that, and they're going to do a condition assessment on all those ponds. Staff will be bringing back a report to council with recommendations on maintenance and upkeep of those facilities. But yes, to answer your question, those would be at our expense, and we'll be bringing forward a report that's going to lay out the maintenance responsibilities that are associated with all our stormwater management ponds within the town. That'll be one of them.
Okay, thank you. Look forward to that report. That's it.
I think I just have one question for the Director of Public Works as well. In that same paragraph that Mayor Junkin was talking about, it says holdback securities will be released upon assumption. So there is no holdback securities?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there is no securities that are held back for phase one. The request is coming forward now with the assumption for both phases, because the developer for phase two is requesting the release of securities for their development, which we do have. And once we assume the subdivision, then those securities will be released to that developer.
My second question, I know there's residents in that area that paid deposits when they purchased a lot directly from the developer. Will they be receiving their deposits back then upon release, or you probably wouldn't be able to answer that. Is that part of the securities?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, we will release our securities to the developer. The developer will then we'll have deals in place with the residents that purchase lots, and
Right.
that will be between the resident and the developer itself.
If we pass this evening, when do you anticipate that the town would assume this? Would it be this month or would it be early January?
Sorry. Through you, Mr. Chair, once you pass it, I'm not familiar 100% with the process here, but based on council's decision tonight, if we pass it tonight, then it'll be ratified at the December 16th council meeting.
Number 16. And then shortly after that, the developer will receive his holdback securities, where he can deal with the residents at
Probably January.
January.
But he's in Wall, so how does he get it?
Only the first one, that's it. First one. Isn't it called October?
Councilor Hildebrand.
Through you, Deputy Chair, through the Director of Public Works, you're saying there's a stormwater management pond study going on all our ponds at the present time. Is that correct?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct.
And that involves the maintenance of the ponds as well?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that'll involve looking at the condition of all the stormwater management ponds. It'll also look at maintenance responsibilities, what maintenance should be done on those ponds, with respect to anything that we've assumed our own. That's correct.
'Cause if I may make a comment, at AMO, I sat through several presentations, and one of them was on stormwater power management. And the latest concept was not to fence all these in and to use them as a benefit to the homeowner to increase their values. It was quite an amazing presentation when you looked at what these towns and cities were doing with these stormwater ponds. And I'm not sure whether this is part of the study or this is something we should bring up in the new year, but I just wanted to mention it at this time.
Through you, Mr. Chair, so this was something that council wanted staff to look into, whether or not fencing was required around our stormwater management ponds. The consultant will look at to see which ponds that we do own and have assumed that are fenced and not fenced, and come forward with recommendations on best practices for fencing and non-fencing.
Thank you.
Just one last comment. I know you're recommending this, but do you have any concern that you can't get a hold of the developer in regards to outstanding work or anything?
Mr. Chair, through you, the developer for Phase 1, for all intents purposes, the development company is defunct. The developer is quite aged and is no longer, has dementia. So the company does not exist for Phase 1. The developer for Phase 2 does exist, and that's the developer that we would be returning securities to, is for the Phase 2 portion. And that's where we are holding securities.
And we will hold some of those securities. No, so that's for Phase 1 where there's a minor curb and patching work. So there is no securities for that.
That's correct.
Okay. It's clear now. Any other discussion in regards to this? Seeing none, we'll call it the vote that the committee receive report number 2019-0136 and recommend that council assume the municipal services in Cherry Ridge, Phase 1 and Cherry Ridge extension subdivisions and open the street within the subdivisions as a public highway by bylaw in accordance with the subdivision agreement. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. So 4.3 is deferred, and 4.4 would be deferred. We're going to go to 4.5. Motion put on the floor by Councillor Kaur that the committee receive report 2019-0137 and recommend to council that the council support the proposed Ridgeville Hamlet boundary as presented in this report. That the director inform the manager of long-range planning at the region of Niagara of the council's decision. Any discussion in regards to this? Mayor Junkin.
Questions directed to the Director of Planning. Was this solely your work, or did this get done in conjunction with the region?
Mr. Chair, through you, this has been a collaborative process, but for the most part, it was work that was generated through town staff in terms of the limits of the boundary. But it has been something that we've been working on with the region as the region is proceeding with a new official plan, and there's a need to establish that boundary for this hamlet.
Or if was this circulated among the public?
Mr. Chair, through you, at this point, it has not been circulated through the public. The region is asking for council to endorse this. It will then form part of their process in terms of the regional official plan, and there will be public consultation through that process. Because they're the ones who actually establish the boundary, the region does. And so there will be public consultation as part of the regional official plan.
And do you, if council passes this, it seems like it's just a step in progression, but that in no way stops, for lack of a better word, an appeal process if any landowner wanted to extend the boundaries. We wouldn't be hindering that process at all.
Mr. Chair, through you, no, that wouldn't be. This is establishing a boundary, gives something that the region can work with.
Yes.
As they go through their official plan amendment. They'll get public feedback. That boundary may shift or change based on the public feedback that they get. And then if and when the regional council approves the new regional official plan, there would be the ability to appeal, but it would be appealing a regional decision, not a town of Pelham council decision.
Okay. So just one last little thing. So the region drew up this boundary then with your consultation?
Mr. Chair, yes, it was a collaborative process between regional staff and town staff. We had, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 different examples or suggestions that we worked through. One of the challenges is that along Canberra Road, you have a lot of rural strip development between Fonthill and Fenwick, and you could extend that boundary very long, but as the report rationalizes, we're looking at kind of the character of the village as being one of the defining elements, the impact on any agricultural lands, and so when you start to extend that line out, the character changes, you have greater impacts on agricultural properties, there's potentially more impacts from a servicing perspective, and so through the kind of review and analysis, when we worked through this, it was considered to make the boundary a little bit more tighter around what was traditionally the village of Ridgeville.
Yes. And I can appreciate that. I do know that heading north from the Canberra Road, Effingham intersection, that there is water all the way along that almost, I believe it's within a few meters of Highway 20, so that whole stretch is metered. And I know people say, well, gee, Marv, you're the first one to be on the bandwagon about agricultural land, but the bad part of it is that, yes, that land to the east on Effingham, or on the west side of Effingham Street, going up to Highway 20, you can't farm it as nice as it is, because if you put fruit trees in there and then start spraying them as you have to, then everybody starts worried about this dumb farmer putting pesticides in the land or in the air. And I know that's green belt. Do we take precedent when we do this hamlet? Did we take precedent over the green belt, or do we have to be conscious of the green belt?
No, we have to take into consideration the green belt as well. This area is within the green belt plan area, so the previous 2005 version of the Greenbelt Plan did not even identify Ridgeville as a hamlet. So we were successful in getting, at least when they updated the Greenbelt Plan, getting the Ridgeville hamlet identified with a dot. And it's essentially at the intersection of Canberra and Effingham Street. And so the next step now is to define what is the limits of that boundary. But it's got to be balanced on the agricultural land, the natural areas, the serviceability of those areas. There isn't sanitary sewer to this area as well, so that's also a kind of restriction on the ability to develop lands in this area.
Great, thank you for that.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
Councillor Court?
To you, Chair, to the Director, what benefit does this have for this community or the owners of the properties? Is there a disadvantage or a benefit by us approving this?
Mr. Chair, through you, what this does is it does allow for, if this were to ultimately be approved in the regional official plan, it would be a hamlet designation. So the ability to do redevelopment within that boundary is, that opportunity is there. The ability for some infill development within that boundary is there. So could there be a potential for 1 or 2 new lots being created? Potentially. That's the benefit. It also provides for kind of at least recognition and consideration of a historical village boundary, and there could be future benefits arising out of that. But hamlets are not growth centers. Unlike urban areas that are, hamlets are to service the surrounding communities, and they provide for just a limited opportunities for infill development. Nothing significant.
Through you, the Chair, so you're saying to me is that on the corner of Canberra and Effingham, there's a lot there. There's no way of them putting townhomes in there because of us passing this.
Mr. Chair, through you, right now you were just asking you to endorse this. You're not passing anything. The region will then establish a boundary. That will then allow us the opportunity to amend our official plan to set policies in there about what you would like to see within that area. Currently, there is some land zoned for commercial. We do have a little commercial node there, commercial corner there in terms of some shops. So could that land across the street from the shops be developed for, alternative, another commercial use, or 1 or 2, or could it be used for, maybe 1 or 2 more houses? Yes. Would it be used for townhouses? That would be unlikely, given the servicing restrictions on the lands. There's no sanitary sewers available.
Through you, Chair. Right now, they can't do any of that.
Right now, they're not able to. That's correct.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, then I'll call it the vote. So that the committee receive report 2019-0137 and recommend to council that council support the proposed Ridgeville Hamlet boundary as presented in this report. That the director inform the manager of long-range planning at the region of Niagara of council's decision. All those in favor? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Next item was referred, so we are down to 4.7.
Yep, 4.7, because 4.6 has been deferred. So I'll have a motion from Councillor Wink. Agenda number 4.7. Vesting of property into municipal ownership for subsequent sale. 2019-0135 Corporate Services. That committee received report number 2019-0135 and recommend that council vest roll number 2732 010 016 12510 PIN 64029-0272 LT, Part Lot 20, North-South Ontario Street, Plan 703 Pelham, as in RO 112837, except RO 107119, and Part 1, 59R 8830, into the name of the municipality. Write off the outstanding taxes, penalties, interest, and tax sale fees. Then subsequently sell the parcel of land on the market at an amount more attractive to potential purchasers. Any discussion in regards to this motion put forward by Councillor Wink? Well, seeing none, then I'll call it to vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Number 6, this is the one we all been waiting for. Motion put forward by Councillor Hildebrand that this regular meeting of committee be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for December 16th, 2019, following council. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.